Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And normally in the course of this series, I try to get a little bit cute and set the scene without really mentioning the names of the album that I'm discussing until the title drop proper. But there's a time when you just can't really do that. This is one of those cases because his name is MF Doom. And while at this point his legacy is plenty secure, although you could argue that his run through the late 90s and early 2000s even today does not get the proper credit or acclaim that it really deserves, or even as well remembered as it should be, it's worthwhile going back even further in order to set the scene to that historic run. Back to the early 90s, where MF Doom was making music under the alias Zev Love X and the trio KMD, which wound up actually getting picked up by Elektra and releasing their debut album in 1991, which even had a smattering of some single success at that time. But then a trio of tragedies hit. His younger brother and fellow KMD member DJ Subrock was killed in a car accident, and their second album, Black Bastards, was shelved given the far darker content and the questionable album art. Which really, in the face of gangster rap on the horizons, is the sort of stupid irony for which someone probably should have been pushed out of Elektra. And that person wound up being Zev Love X, who was given $20,000 in the master tapes of Black Bastards to leave Elektra. Again, seems like a real brain trust over there in hindsight, especially given how Black Bastards would become one of the most heavily bootlegged underground hip-hop projects of the mid-90s. But that was small consolation, as Zev Love X retreated from hip-hop altogether in the gangster rap era, damn near homeless in New York City even as his legacy began to slowly grow. And then fast forward to 1997. Mainstream and underground hip-hop were splitting sharply in two, and in Manhattan, MF Doom was slowly returning under a new alias, returning to rap through freestyling. He would soon utilize the infamous Dr. Doom mask to enhance his air of mystery, and then signed to Fondulum Records, a now defunct indie label founded by radio personality Babito Garcia, a longtime friend of MF Doom from the KMD days, and it was instrumental in finally giving Black Bastards a proper release in 1998. Despite being founded as basically a running joke, at least for a short time, Fondulum would go along with Rawkus as one of the premier New York underground indie labels, with early releases from The Juggernauts and Cage. But for the first few singles, MF Doom was the real breakthrough here, and would lead to one of the most celebrated underground debuts in hip-hop. Yep, that's right folks, it's Operation Doomsday by MF Doom, and this is Resonators. So like with Company Flow and Black Star, in some form I have actually reviewed MF Doom on this channel before, either in a full-length review or discussion of his often excellent guest verses. More to the point, he is an artist that I'm familiar with. Before covering this, I've heard chunks of his back catalog over the years. I'm familiar with his more scattershot, freeform style and delivery, where he'll slide around the beat and string together references that can sometimes be kind of overwhelming in their cleverness, but also at some points seeming rather obtuse, or connected by a strand of logic or reference points that you can't quite contextualize. And yet when I say going back to Operation Doomsday caught me by surprise, it's more because it feels like the necessary transitional step to transform Zev Love X into MF Doom proper. At the time, it makes sense that it would serve as a real reintroduction to a tremendous and distinctive solo talent, but nowadays, it's kind of fascinating how much this album feels kind of distant from where MF Doom is right now, but still unmistakably him, and still unmistakably a classic project. And one reason why I opened up this conversation with a discussion of MF Doom's KMD background is because it does color a lot of the thematic arc of the album, especially illuminated in the sample-heavy skits that bookend the project and flesh out some of the story, basically taking you through a retro cartoon sampled version of Dr. Victor Von Doom's origins, both in his madcap hubris and how Doom has always been a little bit more of a complicated villain than some give him credit, especially in it with his competitive war that he fought with the Fantastic Four. It's a very easy parallel to see the physical scars of Dr. Victor Von Doom's accident, then mirrored in the emotional and mental scars of MF Doom's years after his brother's accident, and the rejection of him and KMD by the hip-hop establishment. But dig in between the lines, and Doom does show some real self-awareness. He's playing a cartoon tyrant, and the album is bookended by the sounds of kids arguing back and forth, which frames the inherent myth-making that comes from MF Doom assuming this alter ego. One of the reasons why the album is punctuated by just so many references to pulp sci-fi and superheroes that would come to characterize really his entire career going forward, both in his lyrics and production. And where the wild darkness that would come to characterize later albums to show just how deadly serious MF Doom was taking all of this album, it's lighter and absolutely more accessible than I would have expected from MF Doom. It's actually a really great introduction point to his style and cadence, from his pileup of bars that actually do manage to mostly stay on beat, to his revealing pauses and then substitutions with other words, which again takes a bit of getting used to. And while I will not say I'm a fan of his singing, which shows up a couple times in the back half of the project and is pretty rough, you can tell how slightly old school flows are getting bent into something somewhat unique going forward. MF Doom has always been a student and historian within hip-hop, and it definitely comes through here. And yet I want to highlight some of that uniqueness, because even going back to it now, in its choices of melodies and grooves, Operation Doomsday fits in a place for which I'm not sure there's a lot of easy comparison points, even today, especially when you remember that MF Doom under a different alias produced the majority of the project himself. For one, it's significantly smoother and more slick than you would expect, pulling on a slightly older, almost jazzier timbre of old school hip hop, and while the textures do feel mostly lo-fi, it's never to the point of feeling fragmented or abrasive in the composition, even when Doom will drop out the beat entirely before bringing it back for an extended outro. A quirk that does make the project feel a little indulgent around the edges, but it's underground hip hop in the late 90s, you expect that. And it's not saying that there isn't experimentation here, because there absolutely is. The ominous strings playing off the dusty groove that constantly seem to be slowing down and speeding up with Doom's cadence is definitely an uncanny vibe on Tick Tick, and that's where you consider the melodic palette of this project, which has a slinkier, slightly cleaner tone on a lot of the songs than you would expect. From the scratchy playing off the Sadie interpolation on Doomsday, to the flashy 80s R&B gloss of Red and Gold, from the gentle Tina Marie flip off of Operation Greenbacks to the fizzy knock off the chimes in the Atlantic Star interpolation on the mic, from the scratchy keys around Question Mark to the liberal Quincy Jones sample that's cheesy but still has some real rollick on rhymes like dimes. And just when you think it's all quirk and cheesiness, you get that grimy lo-fi knock off the posse cut Who Do You Think I Am, or the organ and the sinister tones behind Hey, or the chaotic whirl of samples slinking around that very 80s Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis production on The Finest. And while I could nitpick and say that Doom's vocal fidelity never quite seemed fully blended at the same fidelity as the samples, or even consistently across the album from song to song, and then again, the singing, which again is not good, it's never to the point where it feels egregious or obtrusive, and again, it's MF Doom. It kind of fits the scattered, rummaging vibe that's always been in his work, and of all the points, I might give him a pass for it. It didn't feel obtrusive, it felt organic. And now we have to get to the content, and where it would be very easy to say that MF Doom hadn't quite fully developed his more layered, free association style of rhyming, where the word choice and imagery often told more of the story than any actual narrative, because most of these songs would not be that far amiss from what you get on most hip-hop projects, especially from the golden era, bragging about wordplay, talking about violence, even on songs where it seems like MF Doom is trying to win over women. And if you're thinking that might be incredibly out of character for modern Doom, well, the trick is that MF Doom is doing more by saying less, highlighting again the nuance that's always been present with his comic parallel. The women presented in these songs, they always seem a little rougher, more alternative, for lack of better words, around the edges, as he describes them from his King Ghidorah's persona on Operation Greenbacks. Or in the case of the Mic, he takes the time-tested women as metaphor for hip-hop arc to show his complicated relationship and feelings towards the genre, especially coming after KMD. Although Doom has also said that song is based partially off a real-life experience that got him into prison, and given the age of the girl mentioned in the song, I sincerely hope it's not implying that. But that's the other thing. Even his songs like Question Mark feel like more of a sincere tribute to his late brother in painting those pictures of their lives together, who he also shouts out in a couple other songs across the album. You can definitely tell it was an emotional undercurrent. There is also an undercurrent of instability and violence on this project. The Finest has him relish getting into the pit and knocking people flat. Red and Gold highlights folks getting jumped. Even Who You Think I Am, it's a tribute to violent kaiju. And while a song like Hey will display the cartoon villainy that's on display for a little bit broader tone in the framing, there is a darker unpredictability to his cadence and references that foretell exactly where he would go in years to come. And that's important to highlight, because yes, this album is transitional, and if you're used to MF Doom as underground hip-hop's most unnerving, scattershot villain that can barely be understood, you might be underwhelmed by the brighter, jazzier tones and how they don't quite mesh with him fully yet. But to me, it honestly reflects an underlying humanity that you wouldn't hear from MF Doom in the same way going forward, a more revealing glimpse behind the mask before it sealed into place. And all the same, while it's not MF Doom's best album in his historic run, it's one that I personally really do love. A project that's overstuffed with some great interconnecting bars and experimentation, but also having deceptive layers and a fair amount of emotive complexity. It's not MF Doom the way that so many people would come to see him and know him, but it's an arc that's extremely well told here, that's got the diversity and flair to not feel overlong, that I'd say is proper context of the artist. It is essential listening. And for me, yeah, you know what? Light 9 out of 10, the highest of recommendations. And considering the stage that MF Doom would set for years to come, absolutely a project that is worth remembering. And again, if you're looking for a great entry point into MF Doom's story, yeah, if you know, this is a damn fine place to start. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I know this is probably one of those classics that it does not get the same shine in comparison to other Doom circles in comparison with what would come in the early 2000s, but yeah, I'm really happy I got a chance to talk about this. I'm not the hugest Doom fan, but this is something special, deserving of the classic label. And hey, if you want to buy or stream it, links down there below. And I got the poll up there. I'd be happy to see where you guys fall on this. Comments down there too. And especially if you're looking for the remastered version of this album, it is really quite special if you can actually seek that out. The 15-year anniversary one is a good spot for that. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And hey, if you're looking for new episodes of Billboard Breakdown, it's on the second channel. Link is over there. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Resonators on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.